Episode number 190.
And so in terms of the biggest mindset shift, what I had to do in going on this journey was embrace the fact that I was going to get it wrong, that I wasn't going to be the knower or the keeper of all knowledge about this journey. I was going to have to keep learning. And there was some irony in that, because I was like, this is what I do with my kids all the time. Like, this is, I'm constantly saying to my kids, learning is all about growth, and it's all about, you don't know stuff, that's fine. You try something, it doesn't work out, that's fine. And I was actually really like, part of the comfort of staying in teaching is that I know it. Like, you ask me about it, I can tell you, how it's all going to work and whatever. So the biggest mindset shift was having to accept that I wasn't going to be in control, that I was going to make myself vulnerable, that it wasn't always going to work out, and that I had to keep going, had to remain and grow in resilience, really, in order to achieve what I wanted.
Hello, you're listening to the Career Changemaker podcast. Having the courage to leave a career that you have worked hard to build and try something else can be tough. So in each episode, we dive into key career change strategies so that you have a clear understanding of what is required to transition into a new role or a new industry without feeling like you have to start at the bottom or have to take a massive pay cut, because #ain't nobody got time for that. If you are ready for frank and honest discussions about how to become a career change maker, keep listening. I'm your host, lawyer turned career strategist and executive coach, Janine Esbrand. Hello, and welcome to the show. I am excited to be sharing with you an interview episode today. I am speaking to one of my former clients, Anjuli Obaro, about her experience and her career change journey. And I want to emphasize the word journey because her career change wasn't quick. It was a process, and because life happens and sometimes life throws you curveballs, you can't always stick to the timeline that you initially set. But her commitment and her desire to stay true to her commitment has meant that she's been able to make the transition into a role that is fully aligned, that she's excited about, that is going to allow her to make the type of impact that she wants to make. And so I want to share her story with you as a source of inspiration and encouragement. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Anjuli. So I'm super excited to have you here today. We are going to be diving in and having you share a little bit about your journey to where you are right now in terms of your career. So just start by introducing yourself and just letting everyone know a bit about your background and what you currently do.
Sure. So my name's Anjuli, and I have been in education for about 13 years. I started out as an English teacher in a sixth form college, and have continued in that vein, really. So I've taught post 16, so 16 to 19-year-olds English, GCSE and A-level for the past 13 years, and then have kind of gone into the more pastoral route, so kind of like a head of year equivalent in a sixth form college. And I've been in my most recent post for the past 10 years in a big sixth form college in East London. So that's my background.
Thank you for sharing that. So can you share a little bit about why we came to work together? So where were you back when we first had our conversation? Where were you in your career? How were you feeling? Like, what was going on for you that led you to say, I need to get some outside help?
Yeah, so I guess that it really starts with the fact that I got into teaching because I thought it was a stable thing to do after uni. It was reliable. I thought I'd be good at it. I come from a family of teachers. There's lots of chat about education, about making social impact, investing in children and families. And so that had kind of been my reason in. But I never thought it was going to be my life's work or what I was going to kind of end up doing. And so I found myself in 2020 having recently had a baby, and then found myself in the midst of the pandemic, like everyone else, and was teaching online. And I really just felt like I had spent years saying to people who were close to me, my friends, my family, my husband, yeah, I'm really not loving what I'm doing. I really want to get out. Or I'd meet people for the first time and they'd say, oh, what do you do? And I'd be like, oh, I'm a teacher. And they'd be like, oh, cool. And I'd be like, yeah, it's okay. And I was getting tired of hearing myself say that. And I was thinking the people around me that care for me and these new people I'm encountering are hearing this again and again. I now have this daughter who at that point was just one. So she wasn't, we weren't conversational at that stage. But I was thinking, she's going to hear this. She's going to hear me coming home from work and being like, yeah, it's okay, but not being that passionate about what I do. And I think that even though that was how I'd been feeling, I'd really tried to invest in my career up until that point anyway. So I'd kind of gone for on a management course. I'd been encouraged by my employer to do a master's in education. I'd specialised in leadership and education, and I was going for promotion. So I was still trying to make moves, but it was that sense of like, how do I make my way out of this into something that is going to be rewarding and that isn't going to diminish or not account for all of the investment I have made in my career thus far. And so I think teaching online and us all being at home and that kind of stuff made me like, this is a perfect opportunity. I need a career coach. I need somebody who knows this stuff, because I think I felt quite ill-equipped to make the move, because I felt like I'd gone straight into teaching from university. And teaching has, I guess, maybe like lots of industries, but for me, I just didn't know anything about any others apart from my own, but has this ability to make you feel like this is your world, like this is all there is, and this is how you navigate. So I didn't trust my own knowledge of the world in terms of what was out there and how I could access it. But I also felt like I needed somebody who didn't have a vested interest in my decision. So, coming from a family of teachers, there was lots of like, oh, but you're brilliant. And, oh, but the kids really value you. And, all these really positive affirmations, which may have been true, but it wasn't really allowing me to move, to make those changes. So I thought, okay, I don't know where to start. And I'm not even sure how I came across you, Janine, to be honest. I think it was on Instagram. I think, or maybe somebody posted, liked something you did on LinkedIn or something. But I thought, well, I found your page and I was like, great, this woman has a podcast. That means I can get to know her before I take the jump. And so I basically binge listened to your podcast. And I just couldn't really stop. Like, I just went from episode to episode being like, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And kind of agreeing with all this stuff you were saying, but thinking, how do I do this? Like, how do I do all these things she's talking about? So it was at that point that I thought, okay, summer is coming. Online teaching is going to be over. Let me contact this woman and see what she says. So that's when we started our one-to-one coaching experience, which lasted for 3 months in the summer of 2020.
Yes. I remember getting started and being like, I'm so excited, and you're kind of like, okay, how is this gonna work though?
Exactly.
So what would you say was your biggest mindset shift as we were going through the process?
I mean, so many, but I think part of what was very useful about that first session, or the first couple of sessions, was that you got me to do a couple of different personality tests. And I think that was really useful, because there's a sense in which it validates the things that you already think you know about yourself. But there's also a sense in which it challenges you, because maybe you've believed stuff about yourself that isn't as true as you might believe. And one of the things that came through, which was no surprise, is that I'm a real perfectionist and I want things to be perfect and I want things to align just so. And so in terms of the biggest mindset shift, what I had to do in going on this journey was embrace the fact that I was going to get it wrong, that I wasn't going to be the knower or the keeper of all knowledge about this journey. I was going to have to keep learning. And there was some irony in that, because I was like, this is what I do with my kids all the time. Like, this is, I'm constantly saying to my kids, learning is all about growth, and it's all about, you don't know stuff, that's fine. You try something, it doesn't work out, that's fine. And I was actually really like, part of the comfort of staying in teaching is that I know it. Like, you ask me about it, I can tell you, how it's all going to work and whatever. So the biggest mindset shift was having to accept that I wasn't going to be in control, that I was going to make myself vulnerable, that it wasn't always going to work out, and that I had to keep going, had to remain and grow in resilience, really. In order to achieve what I wanted to. And I would say that mindset shift was a process. It definitely wasn't a moment that occurred, but it was also a decision. Like, there were moments, as you will remember, where I was a bit like, oh, can I do this? Or, I just don't feel great about this, or whatever. And so it was an ongoing decision that I just had to keep making along the process of going, I'm gonna see this through, and I've got to keep going, like, even if I don't think I'm making great progress right now.
Yeah. And I love that you said that it's an ongoing process, because it isn't just the thing where it's like, right, I've decided I'm going to get a coach and I've invested in a coach and that's it. And that's like the beginning of the journey. And it absolutely is a journey. And it's so interesting that you say, like, you know, this is what I teach my kids, but then it's hard for me to do it. And I think that is the benefit of having outside perspective, because it's hard to do the things that you know to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing too is, I remember there were times when in the early stages when we were kind of like unpacking your experience, and then you would just throw in like things that you'd done, like radio show host and like all of these amazing things. And I'm like, hey, wait, say what now? Like, let's talk a bit more about that. And I think it happens a lot for people where they kind of just gloss over their experience. It's like, this is my work life. And then you compartmentalize other areas of your life. But I think what was really nice with you was to unpack, here's the things that you do in other areas, and here's the things that you're good at, and like, how do we reflect on those and potentially bring different aspects into where you go next. Can you speak a bit about that, and like how you felt when it was like, oh, actually these things are relevant and these things are skills, versus, oh, that's just something that I did the other day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of that mindset probably comes from how we're educated in the first place. That is that, you know, this is your academic value and this is just the rest of who you are, you know, your hobbies, the stuff that makes you a well-rounded person. And so I think I definitely felt like, well, unless I can say I've done this as a job, unless I can say I've done this for, you know, X amount of years, it doesn't really hold much value. And I think that the other thing that probably helped me to appreciate that more was the whole thing of star examples.
Mm-hmm.
And again, being in teaching, once you're in, and especially if you remain in the same institution or organization, you kind of just make your way up and people know you. And so a lot of what I learned with you was this ability to sell myself, because I just not had to do it. It's not an environment where you have to negotiate, where you have to show your value, where you kind of are grabbing people's attention and saying, pay attention to what I'm doing because it's really good and maybe you want to reward me in some way, you know? And so I think that even star examples, which like sounds so basic, again, what I might be even teaching my kids when they're going for jobs, is like actually getting all of my experience together, whether it be employment or not, and going, actually, if I can lay this out in this way, then it really shows what I can achieve and it really shows what the result was and the action I took, and it centers me in that process. So that was a really like massive shift for me.
Yeah. And in terms of like the approach to coaching and the support, like what did you find most useful about the way that I approach coaching, or like our coaching conversations? What were some of the things that you found helpful?
I think the value of the coaching relationship is that you get to know each other along the way. And so, you know, you might have had brilliant models or whatever that you could use in our coaching sessions, but there were times where it was like, you just asked me the right question because you knew me by that point. And so it was like the difficult questions. It was the things that I didn't really want to have to face. I didn't really want to have to answer. Also, as somebody who talks a lot, which listeners might be able to tell by now, you were great at like getting me to answer the question if there were things that I was maybe talking around a little bit because it was uncomfortable. But I also think it was that sense of like regularly touching base and having almost like homeworks or like things I needed to achieve by the time that we next spoke. But also that ability to contact you in between and be like, oh, actually, I'm struggling with this. Could you give me a few more pointers on that? And so I think that those elements of the coaching relationship were really key to me making the progress that I did.
Yeah, love it. I so enjoyed it. And yeah, that point around like just calling you out on your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember a couple of weeks ago we said this, and now you're saying that. Like, can we just clarify?
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes when you do like have high achieving women who are used to being the ones who help other people, don't have that person who will like just call you out. And that's the part that I really enjoy with clients, like helping them to see that it's okay for you to be vulnerable. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like help you move forward. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about what's happened since. So what I love about your journey is that it hasn't necessarily been, okay, right, we started working together, 3 months, bang, you've got your role.
Yeah.
It has been a process, and like it's like you took what we did together and it ruminated, life happened, like we had another baby, like there's been stuff that's happened in
Yeah.
between. And even so, you've now got to a place where things have moved forward. So let's just talk a little bit about the journey from coaching to where you are now, and then we can explore like the bit that I'm excited about, like as in what's happened.
Sure. Absolutely, yeah. So I think I seem to remember actually at the end of my last coaching session with you, and me kind of saying, so Janine, like, what happens next? Like, you've given me all the skills and the tips and whatever, like, what do I do now? Like, do I just keep going for jobs? And it's a bit like, yeah, but there's also my group coaching program, and you can kind of join in that if you want to and stuff. And so I think that I think that the context for me at the time was that we were returning to face-to-face teaching post-pandemic, and I really didn't know what that was going to hold, but there was almost a sense of being slightly daunted by that, because I'd had this time at home where it felt more like mine to explore all of these potential career options, and I almost felt like I was being sealed back into like, this is your role and this is what you do. And so I think the group coaching program was actually really helpful in having those regular touch points. And it was also great to just meet other people who were on this journey of trying to find something, and people from such diverse backgrounds, like nothing to do with teaching whatsoever. And I think there was someone in like risk management, there was someone who was a couple of lawyers, and like there was a way in which we could really appreciate each other's journeys and kind of offer challenge to one another as we got to know each other, which really helped as well. And then, as you say, in the midst of it, I had another baby. So that was also a decision that was like, okay, am I making the move now, or am I going to try and have another baby? And so the baby was the right decision. But it did feel like, again, it kind of put pause on this journey. And so how do I navigate that? And I think that a massive motivator was not wanting to return from this maternity leave to my role, and feeling like this is my window now, like there's no backing out. And of course at the time you're thinking, well, I'm pregnant and I'm knackered and I'm still working full time, and you know, all of that. So that basically there's a million reasons, if you want to find them, to just put pause on this again. But I think I just was like, okay, I've just got to do this. So I'm trying to think about the time scale. So this was like autumn 2021. I just started applying in real earnest, and it was those kind of like, this is the last thing I want to be doing, but I'm up late doing this application, or you know, trying to find time all the time. And basically between October 2021 and June 2022, I applied for 12 roles that covered a range of Department for Education civil service roles, some assistant head teacher roles. And, you know, in that instance, that isn't really what I wanted. Like, I wasn't trying to stay in education. I was trying to leave, but there was also this sense of, I'm about to have a baby, I need to be responsible, childcare, blah, blah, blah. And so, but I wasn't getting anywhere. And this kind of spoke again to my perfectionism, in that sense of, I've always been good at stuff, where I was a bit like, wow, like I'm really not getting anywhere here. This is, you know, this is interesting. And I think I decided, actually, my husband said, have you looked on Charity Job? And I was like, no, I haven't. And why haven't I? Like, and what I realized I had in my head was that I'd had some charity experience in the past. And in my head, it was like potentially not well funded, potentially not well organized, not going to give me the scope in terms of trajectory that I might want in my career. And so I'd almost just kind of ruled all charity work out, because that was what it was like a limiting belief, I guess. And so started to look on Charity Job, and just found so many more things where I was like, oh, this is me, like this is what I'd love to do. And so started to explore different things. And along the way found 2 roles that I wanted to apply for, one that had come via the civil service and then one that had come by charity job. And so I applied for both of them, and one was a curriculum and learning lead role. And whilst I had not wanted to remain in education, I have, over the past, I'd say maybe 7 years in my role, I've got more and more involved in professional development and training for staff, and had sat through so many staff training sessions myself where I thought, this is awful. They're not appreciating at all what people have to offer. They're just kind of assuming we all have the same level of knowledge. We don't. And so I was having all of this kind of experience at work where I was going, we could do this in much better ways, and people could really find this engaging, and we could learn so much from it. And the value of where I have stayed is that I have had fantastic, ultimately the reason I've stayed in my role for 10 years and stayed there is because I've had fantastic teams and staff support, and people to work with. So a lot of support for what I've wanted to explore. So I've had room to explore some of that professional development stuff. So when I came across this curriculum and learning lead role, I thought, okay, this is about developing adults and providing engaging training for adults. And that's something I'd be really passionate about, especially in this sphere. And the sphere is children's social care. So feeling like I'm still having that social impact, that my values around social justice are still kind of being outworked in that way. But the again, that limiting belief that I had to fight was, you don't know anything about children's social care. And it was like, well, actually, I've been in education for 13 years. I've worked with children and young people in really vulnerable situations. I've been very involved in safeguarding and welfare. So I do have all of that. And I need to not discount that just because it's not the exact fit that in my head is like desired. And the reality was, it wasn't desired. Like even in the job advert, they weren't asking for that. So I was like, okay, Anjuli, don't impose that on this when nobody's saying it at all. So that was the first one. And then the other one was a senior change and engagement manager role. And again, over the past 7 years or so at work, I've just taken a real interest in how to help people navigate change. Because obviously some of us love it and some of us find it really difficult, particularly in a work context. And when you're having to take a whole group or kind of staff body of people with you on the journey, how do you do that? And so I didn't feel like I had any qualification in that, but I thought I'm passionate about it, and I've got lots of ideas and a bit of experience. And over the past year or so, I tried to make my time where I am valuable in trying to kind of spearhead a couple of change management projects so that I had something to talk about when it came to this kind of stuff. So I went for both roles and was kind of hoping I'd get the curriculum and learning lead interview option, and did, and was like, okay, amazing. But was really surprised to get the senior change and engagement manager interview offer as well. And did at that point feel a massive sense of imposter syndrome and just like, how on earth am I going to do this? Like, great, I've written a great application, but like I now need to like attest to this in person. They're going to ask me questions about change management. I don't have any qualification in it. How is this going to work? So it was definitely a source of stress. And again, in the midst of being on maternity leave with a young baby, trying to prepare for both interviews. They both happened to be in the same week, which was another kind of thing to navigate. But ultimately, I really enjoyed them both and kind of sat in those interviews thinking, this is really engaging, this is really fun, and almost had to check myself to not get too relaxed because I was enjoying it so much. And ended up getting a second interview for the curriculum and learning lead role. Didn't get through on the senior change and engagement manager role, but was put on the reserve list for 6 months. And I thought, okay, that's good. You know what? I'm happy with that. I feel like I've done a really good job. And so it's fine. I'm sure there are people who are more qualified. Absolutely fine. Second round interview for the curriculum and learning lead role, I just really, really enjoyed it and was quite surprised by how much they wanted to know me as a person. I kind of came with all of my star examples, and actually they didn't want any of it. They kind of asked me the same question 6 times in different contexts, which was, what would you say your strengths are and what would you say your weaknesses are in this role? And talks about these different roles that I'd done. But also was just really struck by how much of what I wanted from an organization I was going to work for was really being foregrounded in the kinds of stuff they asked me about. A lot of the work I've done at work, at my current job since 2020, has been around anti-racism and how we can actively become an anti-racist organization. And I was really surprised in this interview setting to find that one person's whole section of questions for me were just about anti-racism. And I was just like, this is an organization that really takes this seriously. And so that was just one example, I guess, of like how my values were being echoed in this experience. And then they offered me the role. So yay. So got super excited, but again, couldn't quite believe it. I was like, really? Like, is this happening? Am I like actually making my move out of teaching? And it's actually happened before the end of my maternity leave, so I don't have to go back. Like, how is this happening? And so got really excited about that. And again, just all of the communication, as soon as I accepted the role, I was getting these emails and these phone calls and everything about their communication. I was like, these are my people. This is who I want to work with. And so ultimately, I'm going to be designing and delivering leadership programs for social workers at all levels of their professional journey to help them to exercise leadership in everything that they do, and make a bigger impact on the children and families they're working with. So I'm really excited about that. In terms of this next phase for my family, it's also a great fit. I can work from home for a substantial amount of the time. I get some national travel, which is exciting. We do kind of program residentials for the people who run the programs throughout the year. So that's fun. I get to do a little bit of delivery, which I like, but also thinking about the learning and design of it, which is really brilliant. But I, thinking back to my first few months working with you, Janine, I would never have said, oh, this is my ideal role. This is what I really want to go into. It's definitely something that evolved and really has come through this opportunity being presented in the first place. I think had the opportunity not been presented, I wouldn't have said on paper, oh, this is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, so happy. And I think what you just said there around like the opportunity came, but you wouldn't have necessarily known that it was there. So like you highlighted that there's so many elements of this role that is so aligned, and like your values are aligned to the organization. But I think what was important to do, which we worked on in the early stages, is establish what your values are. Like, what are your values? What is important to you? So it's like then you're able to recognize it when you hear them talk, when you read the job spec, when you see it's like, oh, you can say these are my people because you identified what your people would actually look like or how it would feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's a step that a lot of people miss. It's like, I'm going to go straight and look for opportunities, but it's like you then have nothing to compare it against. Like, you need to understand, what is my criteria? Then go out and then I can see whether these things fit within my criteria. So I love that. Yeah, life has happened and it's kind of been a bit windy, but it was like stop and start for you. But you've been able to use what you learned back there to then apply to now. And I love that you said like you enjoyed the interview. So let's just talk a little bit about interview prep, because I remember getting an email from you being like, oh, I've got some jobs coming up. I was like, should we just jump on a call?
Yeah.
Some job interviews rather coming up. So talk a little bit about interview prep, and then how if and how that helped you to feel calm and like the way that you felt within the conversations that you were having.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that offer of a call was just like amazing. I was like, yes, please, let's jump on a call. The only interviews I've done have been, again, in educational settings. And I think that in those spaces, you feel that sense of like people give you some credibility because of your background and because of, the history that you've built up. And I think that I just felt massively like, what's the word? I guess under-resourced in jumping into an interview where I felt like I couldn't look back at this track record of, I know all about this area of work or this industry or whatever. And so the interview prep was really, really helpful, because I don't know how to express it. It's almost like years back, kind of almost from when I was at university or whatever, I've also had this belief that like I can win people and I can talk the talk and I can like almost you don't need to prep, like almost like if you can just talk to people intelligently and make emotionally sensitive decisions in those conversations, and think of good examples, like you're okay. And I think it was really working with you, but also learning from my husband in his kind of work search and things that he's been doing over the past couple of years, and in somebody who's not in teaching at all. Again, just getting that appreciation of like the world outside teaching, how things work in the real world. Of like, no, you need to prep, and like prep means these things. So like I found it really useful to kind of get down. It probably sounds so obvious to people, but again, not something I'd ever had to think about, but to get down like the mission of the organization, their vision, what their values were, to kind of totally spec up on their website and like work out questions I was going to ask them about how they were moving forward, what their kind of strategic plans were over the next few years, and how I was going to like bring that into conversation. So there was a lot of like homework, I guess, that I felt I had to do on the organization and on the role. But I think that jumping on that call with you was really great because of that need to kind of face the questions, like not just do all the work, but like actually somebody's going to ask you now, and you need to like provide a really good answer. But also I think it was great because you showed me the areas where I was not coming through as strongly as I could. And I think that some of my insecurity was also about language. It was about feeling like I didn't, because this wasn't my industry, how do I talk? Like, what words do I use? If they're asking about how I engage key stakeholders, who are my key stakeholders and how do I bring that through? How do I move from talking about students and teachers to talking about them, you know? And so I think that shift with language was really useful. But also looking at my star examples and thinking, okay, you know, I'm really not focusing on the result enough, or I'm still talking as we rather than I, and really foregrounding myself in the process. So that was really, really useful for sure.
Yeah, and those are such common things that I pick up with people where they don't focus on the result enough.
Yeah.
And or they don't really take ownership of the result for them, individuals. So it's kind of like, yeah, as a team we did this. I'm like, yeah, but what did you do? Like, they want to know what you did. And so yeah, I'm glad that was helpful, and that, you know, just going back to what you said before around not being able to sell or not knowing how to sell yourself all the time. Like, an interview is not the time to be modest. It's like, this is your chance. Just come and just tell the people how great you are. And so what I love about what you shared earlier around the 2 different roles is that you went into 2 different interviews in the same week for completely different types of opportunities, and was able to show up and like take the same experience that you've had over the last 10-15 years of your career and apply it in different ways. And I think it's important for people to recognize the layers of experience that they have, and then be able to look at it from different lenses so you can talk about it. Because that's what makes the difference. When people say, oh, I don't know, how will I go from this industry to that industry? It's like, you can identify the relevance and you can talk about it, then that's how you do it, versus, oh, I now need to go and retrain or get lots of experience, because you don't have to necessarily start again, take a pay cut in order for you to move. It's like, no, you can like
absolutely. And I think one of the lessons I had to learn in selling myself was to not just tell the truth, which sounds awful, but I guess what I mean is that if people ask me a straightforward question, I tend to answer in a straightforward way. And chatting with my husband about it after I had the session with you, we were talking about this this need to kind of tell them what they need to know, and be like, okay, what do they want from you right now? Tell them that. Like, don't tell them the actual truth, not because you're lying, but because of how you present it. And that sometimes I could just go, well, this is factually what happened, or this is factually what I've done. And it's like, well, no, actually, if you preface that with this, or if you foreground that bit, they don't need to know all of this stuff back here, because that's the bit they want to know. And so that kind of prioritization as well was really, really helpful.
Yeah, that is such a great point. I love how you summarize that, because it's like, this is the information, but like how you present it, it's like, I can take this part and like emphasize here, I can emphasize here, it's still the same information, it just comes down to how you present it. So oh, that's so good. So I'm super excited. Like, just want to celebrate you no end. When I got the email to say that you got the job, I was like, yeah. My husband literally thinks I'm crazy, because whenever clients message me or email me, like literally the whole evening, I'll be like, oh my gosh, Anjuli got a new job. And I'm like, remember that client I was telling you about like 2 years ago? Her daughter's got the same name as our daughter. And he's like, who? I don't know who you're talking about. Anyway, she got a job. Yeah, I'm so excited. If someone's watching this and they are in the place that you were in, like back in 2020, where you're like, okay, I need to get some help, what advice would you give them around like finding support, like taking the step? What would you say to them?
I think I'd say don't delay. Be your first one, because I know that there were probably points before that summer where I thought I could do with talking to somebody, and I just kind of put it on the back burner. So I would say, you know, if you've had the thought, pursue it, like follow it through and do something about it. I do think that social media is like a great way to find different options of people who might be able to help you, and to really, as I was able to kind of listen to your podcast and get to know you in a sense, to really pursue that kind of what's the word, like personality match, almost, of like finding someone you feel you can work with, and just make the calls. Like, you know, just most people offer like a complimentary call or like whatever it is, like just make the calls. You don't need to commit to anything, just make the calls, get a feel, because often it's on those calls or whatever that you start to travel some of that journey yourself in terms of understanding what it is you really want or what it is you really need. And I think that it's about committing this next season of your life, however long that season is, to achieving the goal. And so like there was it was really, sorry, I keep talking about my husband and all of this, but we keep talking about this. He actually said to me this morning, because we were talking about this interview, he said, do you think you would have made this move like if you hadn't had the coaching with Janine? And I was like, no, like I don't, because I think that one, I mean, there are so many reasons why. I could talk at length, and your podcast is limited in time. But one of the main things I said was that, like, I had seen that some of the different clients that you talked about, the emphasis was kind of on the fact that they had made the move within 3 months or whatever. And I was very aware that I hadn't made the move within 3 months. But I was saying to him, you know, even now, even in this past couple of months where it's all come together, in the back of my mind has been, at some point, I need to tell Janine that I've got a new job. And it's not because, you know, you're this ogre kind of presiding over me being like, come on, Anjuli, get a job. But it's because I made that commitment to myself back in 2020, that I was going to go on this journey and I wasn't going to give up. And as you said, there may have been kind of life interruptions along the way. But I couldn't just be like, oh yeah, that was something I did, and then I just kind of got on with other things. It was a process that I started that needed to be completed. And so I would just say to whoever's in that position, you know, really commit yourself to like, this is what I want, and this is going to be my season, even if it takes me 2 years of achieving it and really making that happen. And I think one of the tips you gave me quite early on as well was talking to people about what you wanted. And I think I'd found myself, because I'm more of a talker than a doer, and I know that about myself. So I think I felt a bit like, oh man, if I keep talking about what I want or what I want to do, I'm gonna, like, people are gonna think I'm just chatting and I'm not actually like doing the work. And actually it's been so useful to talk to people because of one of the main things that we talked about in our coaching program, which was around how you network in a real and productive and fruitful way. And so, yeah, like, you know, mentioning it to mums of my daughter's nursery friends has meant that they've hooked me up with someone, or they've said, oh, I've got somebody at work who could talk to you about this. And it's, even that is vulnerable making, because you're like, oh man, like, do I sound like a bit of a loser? Like, I'm kind of like, please help me. But it's been so valuable. And so I would also say that, you know, really, really talk about what it is you want and what you're trying to achieve, because ultimately people do want to help you. And we'll offer things if they know that you want things. So yeah.
100%. Oh, I love it. I love the husband as well. Love the husband. We love supportive husbands over here. So what's next? Like, when do you start? Like, yeah, like what's happening next?
Yeah. So the bit I probably missed out is that I then got a call from the other role that I went for to say that they'd kept me on the reserve list and they'd like to offer me the role because they were expanding and needed more people to do this role. So that was a massive confidence boost.
Can we just pause? I just need
Yeah.
to make sure everyone just caught that. Yeah. So the fact that she went for 2 interviews, completely different industries, and she landed both roles.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on.
Thank you, Lord. Yeah, no, I was so grateful. And to be honest, still just a bit like, that can't be real. Like, how is that possible? But I think in getting both roles, which literally happened last Thursday, like it's so recent. I had to make this decision about, okay, because these are completely different industries, they're going to take me on completely different career trajectories. So the decision I make now is not like a forever decision necessarily, but I am accepting like a kind of a thing I'm going to pursue for the next however many years of my life in my career. So I decided against the senior change and engagement manager role, because I think learning and development is more what I want to pursue. And so there's a sense in which it's brilliant to feel like I've had both of these offers, but I also don't like having to shut one down. I kind of want to keep it on the table, just for the future. But again, that's coming from a place of fear and from a place of, this may not work out, etc., etc. And I think that I need to, or everything that I've learned about how I've let my fears kind of operate in this journey over however long, and everything I've learned about the power of things like imposter syndrome means that I need to continue to talk to myself about those things. And I need to continue to say, actually, I'm not going to allow that thought. There's no reason to allow it. There's no evidence for it. And I'm going to move forward in what I do know, which is that they thought I was good enough to offer me this role. So I'm pursuing the curriculum and learning lead role. I start on the 1st of November, which is great. So it means I get to finish my maternity leave, don't have to return to my current role. I can just go straight in. And it's going to be a totally new professional existence. I'm going to be working from home 4 days a week, going to be able to do drop-offs and pickups and all of that with my kids, which is going to be amazing. Going to get some travel, which is going to be great for me. I think it's going to give me some kind of time to invest in myself, whilst also doing work, but feeling like I've got that kind of work-life balance as a parent as well. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens next. I've had like lovely emails from people that I'm going to be working with just to introduce themselves or just to kind of give me a couple of dates and heads up and stuff, and just to get that communication from people who are actually using exclamation marks in their emails and being like, really looking forward to working with you. And I'm thinking, you weren't even on the interview panel, you haven't even met me, but it's really motivating and exciting. And I think that there's lots of room for growth in this organization. So I'm excited about that.
So good. And I love that you said, this is what I'm committing to for this period, because I think one of the biggest things that trip people up is I need to make a decision about what I do for the rest of my career. And it's like, no, we're making a decision about what makes sense in this season of life. And that could be a 2-year thing, a 5-year thing, a 10-year thing. But it's like, what do I want to do now? Because you might want to change, and it's okay. Everything that you've gone through this time round to change course or whatever, you can absolutely do again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will have so much more confidence doing it again second time round, because this first time has felt like such a it's felt quite painful in different ways, such a kind of break away from everything that I've been used to, really getting out of my comfort zone. And so I think that second time round it will be a lot more not just natural, but something that I really want to do, like something that's actually quite motivating and exciting, and that I have much more confidence in. So yeah.
Well, Anjuli, thank you so much for coming to share your story. I'm super excited for everyone to hear and be inspired by this journey. I love the fact that you took your time, but you got there, and that you're excited about the role that you're about to move into. So thank you.
Thank you for everything. It's been an amazing journey, and I feel like I'm going to need to keep you updated for the rest of my life about my career moves. So get ready for emails.
How amazing. How amazing. Not only did she land one job offer, she landed two in completely different industries. And that just goes to show that you do not necessarily have to go back and retrain and start over, but it's more about how you position your expertise, because she was able to land two different roles in two different industries using her same skill set. So let that be an encouragement to you. Understand how to position yourself, and that can really help you to get to where you want to go. And if you need help with that, and if you can resonate with what Anjuli shared about where she was at the beginning of her journey, then absolutely reach out, because we have a few slots available in the current cohort of the Career Changemaker program, and I would love to support you and have you as my next case study. So head over to careerchangemakers.com/CCM program and make your application there, and then we'll see if it's a good fit. All right, that's all from me for this episode. I will be back again very, very soon. Until next time, look after you and make sure you're focusing on your career development. Bye. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any future episodes. Also, I would love to know what your biggest takeaway has been from today's episode. Come over and join us in our Career Changemakers community over on LinkedIn so that you can join the conversation there. I look forward to seeing you.